Hello again there, friends and fans. Raptor here, and welcome back to another episode of a tutorial for Farthest Frontier. Recently, we showed you how to get started on your Day 1 survival city, and then how to take care and make and build your farms and store crops and all sorts of things related to food. And today I wanted to cover cows, but also I wanted to add a little special something extra onto today's video about blueberries. If you didn't know, you could actually move blueberry bushes in the game and actually harvest them with foragers. So I'll go ahead and show you that, and then we'll get into a little episode on how to buy cows and take care of them and prepare for them in the barns and how to use them to basically fertilize your crops in your fields even before you build them. All right, well, thanks again for subscribing. We're going to jump into our blueberry episode first, and then cows will come a little bit later. So thank you very much for subscribing. Welcome to all the new members. Thank you for smashing the like. This game is phenomenal, by the way, and there's great videos on the channel, too. So if you're just getting started, there's plenty of helpful hints, tips, and tricks on the channel. So make sure you check it out. And let's jump in to Farthest Frontier. On our way now to Raptor Valley to take a look at those blueberry farms. Let's go. Well, I didn't know this until more recently, but you can actually move blueberry bushes in this game in order to make kind of vineyards or little farms with your foragers. This is a very good tactic, especially early game, in order to maintain a good amount of consistent food, especially for a much smaller population, somewhere around 30 or less people. But we've scaled it up immensely here in this gorgeous map in Farthest Frontier. Let's go ahead and take a look around a little bit, and what you're looking for essentially when you're looking at your blueberry bushes are a symbol that looks like this, and you can hover over a blueberry bush to see that it's actually a blueberry, and of course zoom in too. It is now the midsummer, and so I believe berry season is coming. You can see those berries looking nice and ripe, but not yet ready for the picking. If we take a look around the map, by the way, we can find blueberry bushes primarily near lakes and rivers, or I should just say lakes because I haven't seen rivers yet in the game. But blueberries typically grow in very nice small little groups, which I may have actually eradicated all of them as I move them all to these new farms. But essentially they grow in small little groups like this. Hawthorn, for example, cannot be moved. Sumac and other bushes and things like that can't be moved. This is a better example here. But these blueberry bushes can. So they grow in tight groups of like 3 to 5, maybe even 6 bushes. And you can actually click on them, and here it says, berries regrow seasonally and can be harvested by laborers or foragers as food. It is often a good idea to relocate bushes near a storage for ease of harvesting. Yeah, check that out. That little button there, well, that button there, the house pointing to the left, is your relocate button. So instead of clicking harvest, resource, delete, or prioritize, if we click that button, we can actually get then like a little building menu, like a little grid, and then we can place these somewhere near our camp. Now we can move these again and again and again, so if we get them closer to our camp and then want to redo our farms, we can do that pretty much any time, and the foragers will be able to pick them. Now one of the cool things here that I've noticed so far is that the blueberries here, this number here is about 322 berries have been picked just in the last year by this forager alone, which is a crazy amount of berries, and that's very, very good. In fact, if we look up here at our food stores, we have over 1,000 berries in storage, and berries are very important because they help to prevent scurvy, especially early game. Now, later game, you'll be able to get things like apples, peaches, and pears, and they'll last a lot longer than berries, but berries are basically free. They will never go bad in terms of like the bush dying off, and you never have to water them or farm them or do anything other than harvest them when they're ready. So it's basically a free resource, and that makes it super, super powerful. Additionally, berries can be turned into preserves after you build your glass maker in order to make glass or purchase the glassware as well. And then in the preservist building under tier 3, you can actually build that and put all your berries into storage in your root cellars. So here under tier 3, yeah, the preservist building right here, very important. Now the preservist can process things out of root vegetables, berries, and fruits. So this building will be incredibly important, but the biggest bottleneck seems to be with glass production. So keep in mind that a lot of your berries still may spoil. Now this farm is kind of a test and really overkill for the size of our city right now. We're at about 100 population, Although we're only employing about 5 people here to work at these foragers, and so they spend most of the year carrying those berries back and forth to the root cellar after they pick them, and they can store about 300. So the math here, what I've seen so far, is the blueberries seem to hold about 20. 20 berries typically are on each of these berry bushes, and so we've kind of done like a 4 by what looks to be a 5 here. No, I'm sorry, a 4 by 6 with a few spots notched out for the little forager here. So I'm still experimenting with the math and such, but really the math for each of your cities should be different based on how many people you have and how many bushes you can find. If you got lucky like me, you can almost make a blueberry bonanza and go crazy here and store all the stuff up here in your root cellar, which is going to be very important. Again, remember, your root cellar can be upgraded to tier 2, so you can put all these berries into barrels and then store them for a very, very long amount of time. So berries can be used as soon as they're picked. There's no special equipment for it. It doesn't take any tools, and it only takes one person to do. And also, of course, they can be turned into preserves, which also sell for a lot for the trader who may come in by the name of Masuk the Silver Tongue. Very, very good. So we see our people running back and forth, often with these baskets on their back, ready to pick berries and deliver them continuously to the root cellar, or they're over here cutting down trees and things like that. But it's a very good use of your space, requiring no fertilization. If we take a look here at fertility, there's going to be no change to having to plant those. Raiders are coming in. That'll come in the spring, but that's going to be a tutorial for another time. So this seems like a good setup for now, just trying to put as many berry bushes as you can with overlap. And then also placing your blueberry bushes near, for example, other sources of food like bird's nest or greens is a good option. So that way when your worker is not gathering berries, which is probably going to be rare, they can grab other things for you too. But really, at the cost of 1 or 2 people, or in this case 5, that's a very good amount. Considering that, for example, our farm up here is already employing, I believe, 4 or 5 people. That's pretty good. We have ourselves 2 multiple food sources now. So in conjunction with our hunters, in conjunction with our berry farms, and in conjunction with our farm fields, we've got 3 great food sources. We've got fish and protein. Essentially, the game lumps fish and meat all together under one category, protein all at the top, as you can see. And then, of course, we've got vegetable and fruit. So all 3 of those are covered, with grain coming very soon to this town. But those are going to be some great things to store for a very, very long time. And the nice thing, too, is that preserves sell for quite a bit of money in your town. So as you start selling that to your people, you'll also generate a lot of extra tax revenue, which you can use to buy other things, like, for example, those cows. So this might be a good window to feed your people and keep them off of other foods, too, which another great thing to note is that when it comes to cows, if you're giving your people meat from the cows, cheese from the cows, and milk from the cows, that's 3 sources right there. So that way those sources last a lot longer. So if we're making berries, for example, you can also make all of those other things last longer because we have another food group. And of course that helps for upgrading all of the houses from tier 1 to tier 2. That can be a little tricky. So meat and berries just alone could be enough to get your town to tier 2 and rocket towards tier 3, where you should definitely build yourself the barn and then eventually start on cows. So pretty good stuff. Another good note, by the way, which I might not cover in today's episode about cows, is that granaries are a great way to store grain from farms, and it really goes to help store grain and flour. So when you build your farms, just make sure you put maybe a grain silo nearby, as of course the cows eat the grain, and also they will eat root vegetables too, but not the berries. The berries are just for your people and just for preserves, but no one will buy them. So if they go bad, if they spoil, that's quite all right. In fact, up here you can see that 8 of the 9 months of our food is just going to spoil, and most of that is berries, but that's fine. Keep the production going until you then can preserve them, and they'll last for many, many years. They go from literally no amount of spoilage time at all, like they spoil right away, to lasting very, very long. In fact, some of the best food in the game is probably the preserves, which you can make from berries, and the cheese, which you can make from dairy. All right, well, without further ado, let's get into our episode then on cows. Just remember, a brief little synopsis here. Blueberry bushes are the only type of bush to be moved. No other bushes can be moved at this moment in the game. Click the little yellow button, move them to wherever you'd like. You can move them multiple times. You cannot get more seeds from blueberry bushes, so you have to go find each individual bush and move them into an area around your forager. Foragers only take 1 person, they cannot be upgraded, and they're a very good source of labor, which can produce a hell of a lot of food in a very short amount of time with minimal effort. All right, on to cows. Here we go. Ah, yes, cows. Hello again there, friends and fans. Raptor here, and welcome to our cow tutorial here in Farthest Frontier. This game's coming out, or has come out, on August 9th, 2022, and is entered early access, where a few things we cover today may change in the future, but the basics of obtaining cattle and being able to take care of them will be here today. Over on the left side of the screen, you see a little wagon pulling into our trade center here, where we could trade for cows anytime that the trader is selling them. Typically, we're looking for a trader by the name of Plains Rider, who will come around from time to time. And keep in mind, your trade center, when you build it at Tier 1, might look slightly different than this one at Tier 2, but the building will do the same, and cows will be available anytime that the trader is trading them. Here we have Beldar the Peddler, who unfortunately for us is not selling cows at the moment, but this is how the screen will appear. There'll be cows on the screen, and typically cows sell for somewhere between upwards of 700 gold per cow, all the way up to about low 900s. Keep in mind that you'll need to buy a few cows in order to, of course, have them breed to make a bigger herd, and so that way you can, of course, make more milk and even more cows. Now, there's no sex to the animals. You just purchase cows, and they just happen to do their thing automatically, so there's no worry there. And once you've got them, you can send them to your barn, which I'm hoping that you've built ahead of time. Now, this here is the Tier 1 barn, and it's a good idea to have this built before the cows arrive or before you want to buy them, because you won't be able to take care of them without the barn ready to go. Now, in this game, your cattle will be able to take care of themselves by grazing out at fields somewhere that you've designated, but during the winter months, they'll be able to eat all sorts of food, such as grain and root vegetables, and apparently hay, but I have not seen any way to obtain hay or to be able to dry it or do anything like that from cutting the grass or whatnot. So just make sure that if you're going to have cows, that you also have extra fields available for them to be able to, of course, eat throughout the winter. All right, well, we've got our cows over here, and they're out grazing on their own, and it's fantastic. They're going to be able to take care of themselves, and eventually calves will be born automatically. And there's really nothing you have to do for this, but one good thing to think about is if we press F, as in Foxtrot, we can see that the ground is turning from like a yellow to a green to almost a blue color. And wherever we tell our cows to go and graze, that'll actually raise the fertility of land in which they're grazing on from all the manure. Now, one thing we can do is be able to move this year after year. It's a 10 by 10, or rather, 10 by 10 square. And so we should be able to take 10 by 10 fields and also have them graze from those fields if they happen to be growing clover for that year. However, I haven't seen the ground underneath the fields be affected positively by that, but you might be able to check here if you click on your crop fields to see the first tab here, which is fertility. That may affect it. I haven't seen any evidence to that just yet, but it could be something to consider in the future. Otherwise, it is at least a good idea to be able to have your cows 10 by 10 graze some sort of a field, and then, of course, be able to build a field on that area in which they were grazing just moments ago. And that, of course, will raise the fertility of anything you grow. So imagine this. You send your cows out to a field to graze, and then you have them raise the fertility through grazing, and then you go ahead and make something like carrots or turnips for them to eat for the winter and send them somewhere else to graze. Additionally, a great tactic is to make 5 by 5 fields. So you can make a 5 by 5 field here, times 4, and then you have yourself a 10 by 10. And with all the crop rotation in the game, cattle will be able to, well, hopefully be able to fertilize these fields, so that way your crop rotation plus all the fertilization from the cows should add even extra fertilization when you grow clover. Now, as it comes to milking the cows, you can turn that on and off. And milk production is mostly affected by whether or not they're getting enough food, otherwise the numbers will lower. So milk production right now is at 100%, and we are milking them, and the milk is being sent across the street to the cheese maker right over here. So the cheese maker is receiving the milk and doing their job, and boy oh boy, can you make a lot of milk and a lot of cheese. Look at this, 448 milk. We can also sell the milk raw to the town, so milk is being sent to the market for the day in order to be sold and consumed pretty much same day, and also the cheese maker is taking as much as they can. Milk can also be stored in the root cellars, but of course, as you would imagine, that is probably amongst one of the first things to spoil. The barn can be upgraded to Tier 2, and the upgraded barn will allow you to store up to 16 cows. Right now we have 13. We can increase that number to 16, or we can cull the herd by lowering the number. In other words, we can basically say, hey, we would like to slaughter a certain number of these cows once they go over that number. So we can hold up to 13, so we can have a few calves for the next year. But if we set it to example 10, then that means 3 of the cows that were of age would be slaughtered for the next year. So you can move their grazing at any time from this menu. You can also adjust the herd size from that menu for slaughtering. You can also divide the herd, which allows you to send some of them to a different barn. So if you have multiple barns, you can have multiple grazing areas, so you can have multiple fields covered by the cows as well. And so if you have 2 barns, then of course that means at minimum you have 26 cows that you can have, and then you can of course then have them slaughtered and adjust those numbers at any time. But that's a lot more cows to feed with all your root vegetables and other things. Another thing to consider is that a good area to have them feed is over by your orchards. Here we have an arborist who is just across the street, is taking care of all these trees here. We have apples and oranges and pears being grown, and the cows can come on over and basically fertilize this land. But the only thing that seems to affect is the longevity of the tree and not the yield of the fruit. In other words, trees will eventually die and need to be replanted in this game, but you can't really affect too much of their fertility until you've grown a new tree. So perhaps the land will be more fertile underneath, but once a tree has matured, it will only last for so long at that fertility and yield, and then eventually die. So that's something to kind of consider for the future. So the barn can be upgraded and the cheesemaker cannot, so keep in mind that if you have a few cows that are producing as much milk as ours, you're probably going to want to make another cheesemaker, especially if you're feeding them very well. The upgrade cost of the barn is 125 planks and 25 stone, and that will give you a item production speed increase, otherwise known as more milk. Fewer items consumed during production, so you actually get a debuff on the food in which they'll eat, probably more likely in the storage for the winter, and then also an increased herd size, which increases up to, at the time, 16 rather than 13. So a lot of great things to keep in mind and to pay attention to. Cheese sells for quite a bit of money inside of your markets, and even more money inside of the trade depot. Looks like we have a trader just leaving now, and I guess somebody from before. But we can sell milk and cheese to certain people, but not everyone will buy it. But when they do buy it, they'll buy it at a rather low price, it seems, like maybe 10 or 5 or 6 or something like that. But the amount of cheese that you can make, especially if you're making 2 of the cheese makers, is a lot. There's a lot of milk that you can make, and a lot of cheese from all of that as well. One of the tactics I plan to do here is to basically move the grazing area all throughout this farm field here that we've fenced off to protect them from predators. It's a good idea to make sure that the grazing lands in which you plan to use are fenced in, so no wolves or perhaps raiders can come in and kill them. So you definitely don't want that to happen. So we built a nice fence here. Any fence will do. You can build a fence of wood or a fence of stone, and they won't be able to get over either of them, and it'll keep them nice and protected. Additionally, they should be able to walk through fences that have gates too, so you can see that people will be able to walk through those. If raiders come, it works essentially like a defensive gate as well. It'll block them. The gates will automatically close if raiders come. So, for example, if a wolf happens to wander into town, the gate will automatically close and prevent anybody who might cause harm to the cows from getting through. So the cows will continue to graze. You can actually see it. There you go, a little calf right there. Wonderful. And we got some other cows wandering around. So the plan here is to make another 10 by 10 field and make wheat here, so that way we can then give more grain to the barn and then more grain to the mill, so that way we can have bread year round. And then of course we'll have meat from the cows, we'll have cheese from the cows, and we'll have essentially bread from the cows too, from all the grain that they'll be able to help grow. So that's fantastic. Now, not only does a slaughter of cows give you meat, but also it gives you pelts and tallow. So the pelts will go towards things like, for example, making shoes or making hide clothing, so that way people are better to survive the winter. And then also tallow, which is great for making soap. So your people's hygiene and your people's protection from exposure, and also their speed in doing things in the town can be increased with a cobbler who makes shoes. And not to mention meat, which can be either immediately sold and consumed, traded, or smoked in order to increase its longevity at the root cellar. So another good thing to note then is that the root cellar can be upgraded as well. Once we have enough bricks, we can upgrade this building to increase our storage of milk even more. Milk can be stored here. We have a little check mark there that allows us to store milk and cheese here. And the only way to increase that longevity is to upgrade the root cellar, which will increase the storage capacity and also reduce the rate of food spoilage. But also barrels, once we have it fully stocked, will reduce the rate even more by 50. So the shelf life is greatly increased, better for trading, and that means more food throughout the year, which means more food variety, which means our people have less diseases. And all of that can be affected by cows. Let's take a look at what the Tier 2 cow barn looks like, and let's talk about other ways to use cows and other tips and tricks. Let's go. All right, back into our towns. There's our trade depot again. All the wonderful traders are in the town. We have somebody here who might purchase cheese from us. Oh, he's actually selling cheese too, so quite the hot commodity to be able to trade back and forth. Some items we're able to purchase and sell at the same time, so some traders will offer us things and they'll also sell us things at the same time, of course at a much higher price to buy and a much lower price to sell, but that's how it goes. Look at that barn. There's your, ooh, look at all the cows too. There's your Tier 2 barn. And of course our increased capacity for cows now. It's been a few years since you may have last seen things. And it looks like the herd is now at population 14 out of 13, which means that some of them will be slaughtered unless we increase it to 16 here. So we can confirm that and kind of adjust things if we want to, or send the herd to a different barn or whatnot. But in this case, now they'll start to produce, wow, look at that milk. Almost 1,000 milk produced last year. 975, that's crazy. And of course, the increased productivity of the building and the reduced cost of the food is really a great benefit. And there we go, a big O wheat field. Well, we're preparing for it to be a wheat field. We're taking a few years here to grow clover and to do field maintenance. And now the cows are also set to be grazing from this field too. So you'll see them actually walking into the, I guess they're all just standing around. I don't know what's going on, but they'll be going over to this field here. Oh, right. They're not able to eat there because it's they're doing a little bit of field maintenance now to get rid of those, probably get rid of the rocks and such. But we'll have them go over there instead and go eat by the, by the bees. So there you go. It's cool how you can see all the cows too. Each of them kind of look a little different. You can't name them or anything or interact with them really, but at least it's nice to see visually where they may be going. And of course, to be able to see how many you have. So they're all displayed, including calves too, by visually looking at them. So it's good to see when they release the cows, and you can send them to different areas. Over here we have an apiary, bees over here. So they'll be kind of competing with the cows for all the wildflowers. Cows will be eating all the different types of grasses, and the bees will want those too. But in the end, it'll fertilize the area and add even more flowers. So the bees will be happy towards the end there. So yeah, lots of great food sources here, and as you can see, we've only got about 2 months of food in storage. And so after this field's taken care of, the increase in flour, grain, in order to make flour to make bread, will increase things even further. So if we take a look here now, we've also got our root cellar we brought up before, now up to Tier 2. Absolutely gorgeous. It looks like Anno 1800. Love the look of some of the upgraded buildings in this game that take brick. They look so good. So the root cellar's upgraded. Let's take a look now at the marketplaces too. They're upgraded a bit. So let's go ahead and take a look at where they may be. Oh, here's our bakery too. So the bakery will be benefiting from all those cows, of course, making more wheat for us unknowingly. Here's our marketplace. We got our Tier 1 marketplaces, so we'll have to upgrade to Tier 2. And you can actually see right there, milk and cheese on display in the market, and some rats too. We'll have to get some rat catchers going. But yes, milk and cheese are on sale in the market, and so you can actually see that visibly too by clicking on that. Now also, of course, it's all been sold here technically, but it is an item that's available for sale. So once it's replenished, it'll kind of be for sale. But it shows that it's possible, or that it's been in the market before. So pretty cool. So yes, now once we've kind of finished up with this area, I would say this is actually pretty good for the cows so far, other than working on crop rotation. If we want to expand further, we could then build our fence out here even further, cut down some of these trees, claim some of this land for ourselves, use some of the wood in order to expand the fields even further, at least the pastures, and then eventually turn it into fields. Or possibly use this area to raise the cows and then send them to other smaller barns that might have their own dedicated fields or pastures. And then, of course, more and more milk can be created. So at this point, we definitely want more than one cheese maker, but it's good enough to see that one's working. And in the last year, was able to make 1,000 cheese. And, of course, yeah, with the word of cheese, people are moving into town. So that's pretty good. All right, so keep an eye out for trade wagons moving towards your trade depots. Keep in mind the price of cows, not only in terms of the financial cost, but also the pretty high price of taking care of them, though it'll be certainly worth it, especially when you sell the cheese back to traders or the milk and cheese back to your people, and you should be able to survive and thrive in Farthest Frontier. Let me know if anything you found out down below in the comments section. Let me know any questions you might have, and me and anybody else who's been playing should be able to help answer them. And if I got anything wrong or if anything's been updated, hey, make sure you leave a helpful suggestion or correction down below. Thanks everybody for joining me here today for a little helpful tips and tricks. There's more videos on the channel on how to get started for day one, how to take care of all your different types of crops, such as the crop rotation, and more information on building fields and working them as the workers. So make sure you go ahead and check it out as well. And we'll be providing more updated videos as the game is worked on, as it releases on August 9th, 2022. And then we'll, of course, enter early access where many more changes will take place. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.